There is a moment in every conversation when the direction is already set, not by what is said next, but by what exists beneath the words. Influence does not begin when you speak. It begins before that. In the clarity of your thinking, in the steadiness of your inner state, and in how grounded you are before your voice enters the room. Words carry more than meaning. They carry intention. They carry emotional weight. They carry certainty or doubt. And people sense this instantly. You can hear it in a voice that rushes. You can feel it in explanations that go too far. You can notice it in someone who speaks often, yet leaves no real impact. This audiobook is not about speaking louder. It is not about winning arguments. And it is not about forcing agreement. It is about learning how to think clearly, speak with authority, and influence without creating resistance. True authority is quiet. It does not need to prove itself. It does not chase approval, and it does not rely on pressure. When your thinking is clear, your words become precise. When your words are precise, your tone settles. And when your tone is calm, people listen. Not because they are pushed, but because they trust what they feel. Force creates tension. Tension creates resistance, and resistance closes people off. Clarity does the opposite. It opens space. It lowers defenses. It allows influence to happen naturally. This is why some individuals can say very little and still shape the direction of a room, while others speak constantly and struggle to be taken seriously. The difference is not intelligence. It is not charisma. And it is not confidence in the way it is commonly described. The difference is internal alignment. When your thoughts are scattered, your voice carries uncertainty. When your voice carries uncertainty, people hesitate. They sense the lack of grounding even if they cannot explain it. But when your inner world is ordered, your words land differently. They arrive with weight. They create stillness rather than noise. This audiobook is an invitation to return to that center. Not to learn scripts, not to memorize techniques, but to develop a state of clarity that shapes how you think, how you speak, and how you show up in conversations that matter. You will learn why silence is often stronger than immediate response, why speaking less can give your words more power, why explaining yourself too much weakens your position, and why influence does not require dominance. The goal is not to control others. The goal is to control yourself so completely that your presence becomes steady, reliable, and trusted. Authority is not something you demand. It is something others feel when you are grounded. Influence is not something you push. It is something that follows clarity. Throughout this audiobook, you will be guided back to fundamentals that are often overlooked in a noisy world. Clear thinking, emotional restraint, deliberate speech, and inner discipline. These are not flashy skills. They are not quick wins, but they endure. When you no longer rush to fill silence, people lean in. When you stop over-explaining, your words gain weight. When you detach from the need to be liked, respect begins to form. And when you lead yourself with consistency and control, others respond without being asked. This is the quiet advantage. The ability to remain calm when pressure rises. The ability to speak with precision instead of volume. The ability to influence outcomes without force. As you continue, do not listen with the intention to copy behaviors. Listen with the intention to recognize states of mind. Notice what happens when clarity replaces urgency. Notice how restraint creates strength, because influence does not come from saying more. It comes from being clearer. And clarity, once established, changes everything that follows. Chapter 1. Clarity comes before influence. Influence does not begin with expression. It begins with alignment. Before a word is spoken, something is already communicated. Your pace, your stillness, your certainty, or the absence of it. People respond to what they feel beneath your words, long before they evaluate what you are saying. This is why clarity matters. Clarity is not about having more thoughts. It is about having fewer, and knowing exactly which ones matter. When your thinking is unclear, your communication becomes unstable. You shift positions mid-sentence. You soften statements that were meant to be firm. You explain, then explain again, hoping to land somewhere safe. And even when the words are correct, they carry no weight. Not because the message is wrong, but because the mind behind it is unsettled. Clarity is an internal condition. It is the difference between reacting and choosing, between speaking to fill space and speaking to establish direction. When clarity is present, you do not rush. You do not compete for attention. You do not feel the need to prove your intelligence or justify your stance. You speak from decision, not from pressure. This internal decision is what gives words authority. Authority is often misunderstood as confidence, but confidence without clarity collapses under stress. Clarity, on the other hand, holds. It allows you to remain steady when the room shifts. It keeps your tone even when challenged. It prevents emotion from leaking into your voice. Without clarity, emotion fills the gap. Uncertainty turns into defensiveness. Defensiveness turns into over-explanation, and over-explanation weakens your position. Not because explanation is wrong, but because it signals that you are still negotiating with yourself. Clear thinking ends that negotiation. When your position is settled internally, your words arrive cleanly. You do not search for the right phrasing. You do not adjust to manage reactions. You say what needs to be said and stop. This restraint is often mistaken for confidence. In reality, it is clarity at work. Clear thinkers speak less, but when they do, people listen. Not out of obligation, not out of pressure, but because the message feels grounded. Clarity also creates emotional distance. You no longer depend on immediate agreement. You no longer need validation to continue speaking. You're willing to let silence do its work. This detachment strengthens influence. People sense when words are not chasing approval. They feel when a statement does not need reinforcement. And that self-sufficiency changes how the message lands. Influence grows in that space, not through persuasion, but through presence. Clarity also sharpens judgment. When your mind is ordered, you recognize what is worth responding to and what is not. You stop engaging in conversations that dilute your energy. You stop correcting details that do not affect direction. You choose precision over volume. One clear sentence can redirect an entire exchange. 10 unclear ones can exhaust it. This is why clarity must come first, before tone, before delivery, before technique. No communication skill can compensate for a confused mind. If you are unclear, no amount of articulation will carry authority. If you are grounded, even simple words will. Clarity does not require certainty about everything. It requires honesty about what you know and what you do not. It allows you to say calmly, "This is where I stand," without needing to convince. That calm finality is felt, and it changes the dynamic of every interaction that follows. As you continue through this audiobook, return to this principle whenever communication feels strained. Before you speak, settle your thinking. Before you influence, establish clarity. Everything else builds on this foundation. Without clarity, influence becomes force. With clarity, influence becomes natural. And that difference determines whether people resist your words or follow them. Chapter 2. Silence is not weakness. Silence is often misunderstood. It is mistaken for hesitation, for lack of confidence, for having nothing to say. In reality, silence is a form of control. Before words are spoken, silence sets the frame. It establishes pace. It creates space. And space determines who leads the interaction. When you rush to speak, you surrender that control. You allow urgency to dictate your behavior. You react instead of choosing. Silence interrupts that pattern. It gives you a moment to settle your thoughts. It allows emotion to pass without being expressed. And it signals that you are not pressured by the moment. This is why silence often feels uncomfortable. Not because it is weak, but because it removes noise. Noise hides uncertainty. Silence exposes it. Many people speak quickly not because they have clarity, but because they fear the pause. They fill space to avoid tension. They explain to prevent misunderstanding. They respond immediately to maintain relevance. But influence does not come from immediacy. It comes from composure. Silence communicates composure without a single word. When you pause before speaking, your words land with more weight. They are heard as intentional rather than reactive. People sense that what follows has been considered. Silence also changes the emotional temperature of a conversation. Fast speech raises energy. Raised energy invites friction. Friction invites resistance. A pause does the opposite. It slows the exchange. It grounds the interaction. And it invites the other person to adjust to your pace. This adjustment is subtle, but powerful. Whoever controls the pace controls the direction. Silence also prevents overcommitment. When you speak too quickly, you often say more than necessary. You offer explanations that were not requested. You answer questions that were never asked, and once words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. Silence protects precision. It allows you to choose the exact point you want to make, and nothing more. This restraint is not passive. It is deliberate. You are not withholding out of fear. You are waiting because you know that timing matters. Silence also reveals information. When you do not rush to respond, others often continue speaking. They clarify their position. They reveal concerns they had not intended to share. In this way, silence becomes a listening tool. You learn more by not interrupting. You understand more by not filling every gap. And understanding is essential to influence. Without understanding, words miss their target. With understanding, even few words can shift direction. Silence also strengthens authority. Not authority based on dominance, but authority based on stability. A steady presence does not need constant expression. It is felt through consistency, not volume. When you remain silent under pressure, you demonstrate emotional control. You show that you are not driven by impulse, and that self-command is recognized immediately. People may not comment on it, but they register it. They feel safer. They feel less need to challenge. They listen more carefully. Silence is also where clarity consolidates. Thoughts settle when they are not rushed. Intentions become clearer when they are not forced into speech. By allowing silence, you give clarity room to form, and once clarity is present, words become simpler. You no longer need to persuade. You no longer need to defend. You state what matters and allow it to stand. This is not a withdrawal. It is presence without excess. Silence is not the absence of strength. It is strength that does not need to announce itself. As you move forward, notice how often the urge to speak is driven by discomfort rather than necessity. Practice letting silence remain, not as avoidance, but as control. Because when silence is intentional, it becomes one of the most powerful tools of influence you possess. Not everything that is powerful is loud, and not everything that is quiet is weak. Chapter 3. Authority is built internally. Authority is often mistaken for presence, for posture, for a confident tone or a commanding voice. But none of these create real authority. They only imitate it. True authority does not come from how you appear. It comes from how settled you are inside. Before anyone accepts your words, they sense your internal state. They feel whether you are grounded or uncertain, aligned or divided, stable or reactive. This perception happens instantly, and it happens beneath conscious thought. You cannot talk your way past it. Authority is built long before a conversation begins. It is built in how you relate to yourself, in whether you trust your own judgment, in whether you need external validation to feel secure in what you say. If you rely on reaction to confirm your position, your authority is already compromised. Internal authority begins with self-trust, not blind confidence, not arrogance, but a quiet certainty that comes from knowing your values, your boundaries, and your direction. When these are unclear, you hesitate. You soften statements unnecessarily. You adjust your message midstream to manage how it is received. And this adjustment is felt. People may not identify it as insecurity, but they register inconsistency. They sense that something is unsettled. Authority cannot grow in that space. Internal authority means you are not negotiating with yourself while you speak. You have already done that work privately. You have already decided what matters. You have already accepted the consequences of holding your position. So when you speak, there is no tension beneath the words. This lack of tension is powerful. It allows your voice to remain even. It keeps your tone measured. It prevents emotional spikes that signal uncertainty. People trust stability. They follow consistency, and they resist volatility. Internal authority creates stability. It allows you to remain calm when challenged, not because you are detached, but because your foundation is solid. Challenges do not threaten you when your position is not built on approval. This is why authority cannot be borrowed. You cannot borrow it from a title. You cannot borrow it from credentials, and you cannot borrow it from performance. Those things may grant temporary compliance, but they do not create influence. Influence requires trust, and trust is built on internal coherence. When your actions align with your words and your words align with your values, people sense integrity. Integrity is the backbone of authority. Without it, confidence feels hollow, presence feels forced, and leadership feels performative. Internal authority also shapes how you handle pressure. Pressure reveals what is unresolved. When you are internally grounded, pressure does not speed you up. It slows you down. You become more deliberate, more selective, more precise. But when internal authority is lacking, pressure exposes it immediately. Your voice tightens, your pace increases, your words multiply. You explain instead of stating, you justify instead of standing. This is not a failure of communication, it is a failure of internal alignment. Authority requires restraint. Restraint is not suppression, it is control. It is the ability to feel emotion without being driven by it, to hear disagreement without reacting to it, to remain composed when outcomes are uncertain. This composure is not learned through technique. It is developed through self-mastery. You must be willing to sit with discomfort without rushing to escape it through speech. You must be willing to let silence exist without filling it to relieve tension. And you must be willing to let others disagree without trying to convert them immediately. These are internal disciplines. They require patience, they require awareness, and they require honesty about your own triggers. Authority grows as you reduce your reactivity. Each time you choose not to respond impulsively, you strengthen your internal position. Each time you speak from clarity rather than emotion, your authority deepens. And each time you allow your words to stand without chasing agreement, you reinforce trust in yourself. People feel this trust. They sense when you are not dependent on outcome. They hear it in your tone. They see it in your pacing. This independence is compelling, not because it dominates, but because it stabilizes. Internal authority also changes how you listen. When you are secure in yourself, you listen without preparing your response. You hear without defensiveness. You consider without concession. This quality of listening communicates respect, and respect amplifies authority. People are more receptive when they feel understood. They are more open when they do not feel managed. Internal authority allows you to engage without control. You are not trying to steer every moment. You are not forcing alignment. You are present, attentive, and deliberate. This presence shapes the interaction more than words ever could. Authority is also reinforced through consistency over time, not dramatic gestures, not persuasive speeches, but repeated alignment between intention and action. When your behavior matches your stated values again and again, people stop questioning your position. They begin to anticipate it, and anticipation creates influence. You no longer need to assert authority. It is assumed. This is the quiet result of internal work. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It simply becomes evident. As you continue, understand this clearly. Authority is not something you perform. It is something you embody. It cannot be added at the surface. It must be built at the core. And once it is built internally, your words require less effort. Your tone settles naturally, and your presence begins to lead without needing to push. Authority, when rooted inside, changes every interaction that follows. Not because you control others, but because you have mastered yourself. Chapter 4. Speak less, mean more. Words lose power when they are overused, not because language is weak, but because excess dilutes intention. When too much is said, nothing stands out. Influence does not come from how many words you use. It comes from how deliberately you choose them. Speaking less is not about withholding information. It is about precision. It is about removing everything that does not serve the point and leaving only what matters. When you speak excessively, you reveal uncertainty. Not uncertainty about facts, but uncertainty about direction. You are searching while speaking. You are adjusting in real time. You are trying to land somewhere safe. This searching is felt. People sense when words are being used to think aloud rather than to communicate a settled position. And when that happens, attention drifts. Clarity fades. Speaking less requires internal discipline. You must know what you want to say before you begin speaking. Not the general idea, but the core. What is the single point that matters here? What is the one sentence that carries the message? If you cannot answer that internally, you will compensate externally. You will add context that is unnecessary. You will explain motives that were not questioned. You will soften statements to manage reaction, and each addition weakens the original message. Restraint strengthens meaning. When words are limited, each one carries more weight. People listen more carefully because there is less to filter. They sense that what is being said has been chosen rather than improvised. This sense of intention changes the dynamic. The conversation slows. The room settles. Attention sharpens. Speaking less also creates space for others, not to interrupt, but to process. When you speak continuously, you deny that space. You overwhelm the moment and force others into passive listening. But when you speak briefly and stop, you invite engagement. You allow your words to land. Silence after a clear statement is not awkward, it is powerful. It signals completion, it communicates confidence, and it places responsibility on the listener to respond thoughtfully. Many people fear this silence. They rush to fill it because they interpret it as discomfort. In reality, it is where influence begins. Silence following clarity forces reflection. It prevents immediate resistance, it interrupts habitual reactions, and it gives your words time to work. Speaking less also protects you from overexposure. When you explain everything, you give others too much material to challenge. You create openings for debate that were never necessary. A concise statement, clearly delivered, leaves little to argue with. It stands on its own. This does not mean you avoid dialogue. It means you do not invite unnecessary friction. You choose when to expand and when to remain firm. This choice signals authority. People sense when you are not trying to impress. They feel when you are not performing. They recognize when speech is used intentionally rather than compulsively. And that recognition builds respect. Speaking less also sharpens your listening. When you are not preparing long responses, you can hear more clearly. You catch nuance. You notice tone shifts. You understand what is being said and what is being avoided. This understanding allows you to respond more accurately. Instead of reacting to surface words, you address underlying meaning. And often, that requires fewer words, not more. A short response, placed correctly, can redirect an entire exchange. A long explanation rarely does. Meaning is not created through accumulation. It is created through selection. The most influential speakers understand this intuitively. They do not dominate conversations. They punctuate them. They allow others to speak. They wait. They respond briefly. And because their words are rare, they are noticed. Speaking less also requires emotional control. Excess speech often comes from emotion, from the urge to defend, from the need to be understood immediately. When you are emotionally steady, you do not feel this urgency. You trust that clarity does not need reinforcement. You are willing to let others misunderstand temporarily, rather than over-explain and weaken your position. This patience is a form of strength. It shows that you are not driven by anxiety about how you are perceived. You are focused on accuracy, not approval. Over time, this approach changes how people respond to you. They stop interrupting. They stop challenging unnecessarily. They listen more closely because they know you will not waste their attention. Your words become signals, not noise. This is the essence of speaking less and meaning more. It is not minimalism for its own sake. It is discipline in service of clarity. As you move forward, notice when you feel the urge to add more. Pause. Ask yourself whether the point is already clear. If it is, stop. Let silence do the rest. Because influence is not built by how much you say. It is built by how much your words matter when you choose to speak. Chapter 5. Tone creates trust. Before a word is understood, it is felt. Tone arrives first. It sets the emotional frame. It tells the listener whether to relax or brace, to open or resist. This happens instantly and quietly, long before logic has time to engage. You may choose your words carefully, but if your tone carries tension, the message will be filtered through that tension. Trust does not begin with meaning. It begins with emotional safety. Tone is the signal of that safety. A calm tone communicates control. Not control over others, but control over yourself. It signals that you are not overwhelmed by the moment, that you are not driven by urgency or fear, that you are steady enough to speak without pressure. People trust steadiness. They trust voices that are measured, paced, and unhurried. When your tone is calm, it lowers the emotional defenses of others. They feel no need to protect themselves, no need to prepare a counter-argument before you finish speaking. They listen. A tense tone does the opposite. Even when the words are reasonable, tension suggests instability. It tells the listener that something is unresolved. That emotion is leaking into the message, that the speaker may be reacting rather than choosing. This creates distance. People do not resist the words, they resist the feeling behind them. Tone reveals that feeling. This is why calm authority is so effective. It does not demand attention. It earns it. A calm tone does not compete with noise. It cuts through it. In a loud environment, calm stands out. Not because it is forceful, but because it is different. It slows the interaction, it resets the pace, and it invites others to match it. Most conversations unconsciously synchronize. People mirror energy. They adjust to pace. They respond to emotional cues. When you maintain a calm tone, others often follow. Their speech slows, their reactions soften. The exchange becomes more deliberate. This is not manipulation, it is emotional leadership. You are setting the standard for how the interaction unfolds. Tone also reflects your relationship with uncertainty. When you're uncomfortable with not knowing how others will respond, your tone tightens. You rush words, you emphasize too strongly, you push points harder than necessary. This reveals attachment to outcome. A calm tone suggests the opposite. It communicates that you are comfortable with how things unfold, that you are willing to let others disagree, that you are not threatened by silence or delay. This comfort builds trust. People trust those who are not trying to control the moment. Tone also shapes how authority is perceived. A raised voice may command attention briefly, but it rarely builds lasting influence. It signals effort, and effort signals strain. Authority feels effortless. It sounds composed, it feels grounded. This does not mean emotion is absent. It means emotion is regulated. You can express concern without tension. You can express conviction without aggression. You can express disagreement without hostility. Tone is the vehicle that carries this regulation. When tone and content align, communication feels authentic. When they do not, people sense inconsistency. For example, words of confidence delivered with hesitation create confusion. Words of calm delivered with tension create distrust. Alignment matters. Tone must match the state you wish to convey. If you want to be trusted, your tone must feel safe. If you want to be respected, your tone must feel controlled. If you want to influence, your tone must feel grounded. This grounding does not come from technique. It comes from internal regulation. You cannot fake calm tone consistently. Under pressure, imitation collapses. Only internal steadiness sustains external calm. This is why tone is a mirror of inner state. If your mind is clear, your tone naturally slows. If your emotions are regulated, your voice naturally settles. If you are internally aligned, your words arrive without strain. People feel this alignment instinctively. They may not describe it accurately, but they respond to it. They trust it. Tone also affects how disagreement is received. A calm tone allows disagreement without escalation. You can state a different view without triggering defensiveness. You can correct without humiliating. You can challenge without threatening. This is crucial for influence. Influence that relies on pressure creates resistance. Influence that relies on calm creates openness. Tone is what makes this possible. When your tone remains even, you signal that disagreement is not danger. This reduces emotional stakes. It keeps dialogue constructive. People are more willing to consider new perspectives when they do not feel attacked. Tone also shapes how finality is perceived. A calm tone paired with a firm statement feels decisive. A tense tone paired with the same statement feels insecure. Finality does not come from emphasis. It comes from certainty. Tone carries that certainty. When you say less and say it calmly, your words feel complete. They do not invite challenge. They do not provoke debate. They simply stand. This standing quality is what builds authority over time. People learn that when you speak, it is intentional. They learn that your words are not filler. They learn that your tone does not fluctuate with emotion. And this consistency builds trust. Trust is not built through persuasion. It is built through predictability. People trust what they can rely on. Tone that remains steady across situations signals reliability. It tells others that your response will not swing unpredictably, that you are not driven by mood or impulse. This reliability is calming. It allows others to relax, and relaxed people are easier to influence. Not because they are passive, but because they are open. Tone, then, is not a detail. It is a foundation. It determines whether words are received as guidance or pressure, as clarity or control, as leadership or noise. As you continue, become aware of your tone before you focus on content. Notice when your voice tightens. Notice when pace increases. Notice when emotion enters the sound. Do not judge it. Simply regulate it. Slow down. Breathe. Settle. Let tone reflect clarity rather than urgency. Because trust is not built through convincing arguments. It is built through calm presence, and tone is the clearest expression of that presence. Chapter 6. Stop explaining yourself. Excess explanation weakens authority, not because explanation is wrong, but because it often reveals uncertainty beneath the surface. When you explain too much, you signal that your position is not settled, that you are still negotiating, that you need agreement to feel secure. People sense this immediately. They may not consciously identify it, but they feel the imbalance. Authority does not come from saying everything. It comes from knowing what does not need to be said. Explanation has its place. Clarity sometimes requires context, but most over-explanation is not about clarity. It is about discomfort. Discomfort with silence, discomfort with disagreement, discomfort with not being understood right away. So words multiply. You add reasons before they are requested. You justify choices that do not require defense. You soften statements to avoid tension, and in doing so, you reduce the weight of what you are saying. A clear statement stands on its own. An over-explained one invites doubt. When you explain excessively, you shift the dynamic. You move from stating to persuading, from leading to asking. And once that shift happens, authority erodes. Not dramatically, quietly. People stop responding to the core message and start engaging with the details. They challenge logic instead of direction. They debate reasons instead of decisions. And the original point is lost. Boundaries prevent this. A boundary is not harsh. It is not defensive. It is simply clear. This is the decision. This is the direction. This is where I stand. No justification, no elaboration. When boundaries are clear, respect follows. Not because others agree, but because clarity commands attention. Many people fear that stopping explanation will make them seem cold or dismissive. In reality, it makes them seem grounded. Grounded people do not rush to be understood. They allow understanding to develop. They trust that clarity does not need reinforcement. This trust changes how others respond. When you stop explaining yourself, people begin asking better questions. They become more thoughtful. They listen more carefully because they sense that your words matter. Over-explanation also reveals emotional attachment. When you are attached to outcome, you explain to manage reaction. You try to preempt disagreement. You try to soften resistance before it appears. This attachment is felt. It makes your message feel less firm, less final. Detachment restores authority. When you are willing to let others disagree, you do not need to convince. You state your position and allow response. This does not mean you are inflexible. It means you are not reactive. There is a difference. Reactive explanation comes from insecurity. Deliberate clarification comes from choice. The former weakens influence. The latter strengthens it. Learning to stop explaining yourself requires emotional regulation. You must be willing to sit with misunderstanding without immediately correcting it. You must tolerate silence without filling it. You must allow others to process without guiding them step by step. This patience is difficult, especially for those who value clarity and precision. But authority requires restraint. Restraint signals confidence in your position. When you speak clearly and stop, you communicate finality, not arrogance. Finality. Finality tells others that your words are not provisional. They are considered. This does not close dialogue. It focuses it. Instead of debating everything, others engage with what truly matters. They respond to direction rather than detail. Stop explaining yourself also protects energy. Constant justification is exhausting. It drains focus. It invites unnecessary engagement. Clear boundaries conserve attention. You choose when to elaborate and when to remain silent. This choice restores control. People respect what is not freely given. When every thought is explained, nothing feels valuable. When words are measured, they are treated with care. This applies not only to conversations, but to leadership, decision-making, and presence. Leaders who explain every choice invite constant negotiation. Leaders who state direction clearly create stability. Stability builds trust. Trust builds influence. Over time, people learn how you communicate. They learn that when you speak, it is intentional. They learn that silence does not mean uncertainty. It means completion. This expectation changes behavior. Interruptions decrease. Challenges become more thoughtful. Conversations become more focused, because boundaries are understood. Stopping explanation does not mean becoming distant. It means becoming precise. It means replacing volume with clarity, replacing urgency with calm. It means trusting that your words can stand. As you move forward, notice when the urge to explain arises. Pause. Ask yourself whether the point is already clear. If it is, stop. Let your statement exist without reinforcement. Let silence follow. Because influence does not grow from saying everything. It grows from knowing what no longer needs to be said. Chapter 7. Influence without approval. The need for approval is subtle. It rarely announces itself. It hides behind politeness, behind flexibility, behind the desire to be understood. But beneath all of that, it carries the same message. I need your agreement to feel secure. This need quietly undermines influence. Not because agreement is bad, but because dependence is felt. People sense when words are shaped to avoid disapproval. They feel when statements are adjusted to maintain comfort, and they respond by holding back trust. Influence does not grow where approval is required. It grows where direction is steady, regardless of reaction. Approval-seeking changes how you communicate. You hedge, you qualify, you soften statements that should be firm. You add context that is unnecessary. Your words become negotiable, and negotiable words rarely carry authority. When you need approval, you listen differently. You listen to react. You listen to adjust. You listen to protect yourself from rejection. This creates tension. You are no longer present in the conversation. You are monitoring it. Monitoring replaces clarity with strategy. And strategy, when driven by insecurity, creates distance. People trust presence. They do not trust performance. Influence without approval begins with detachment. Detachment does not mean indifference. It does not mean arrogance. And it does not mean disregard for others. It means freedom from outcome. You care about what you say, but you are not dependent on how it is received. This freedom changes everything. Your tone settles, your pace slows, your words become direct, not harsh. Direct. Directness feels honest, and honesty builds trust. When you are detached from approval, you stop negotiating your position in real time. You state what you believe to be true. You allow others to respond as they will. This allowance is powerful. It removes pressure from the interaction. It lowers emotional stakes, and it signals confidence in your own clarity. People respond differently when they feel no pressure to agree. They listen more openly. They consider rather than resist. Resistance often arises when people feel pushed toward a conclusion. Detachment removes the push. Influence without approval also changes how you handle disagreement. When approval matters, disagreement feels personal. It triggers defensiveness. It invites explanation. It pulls you into justification. But when approval is not required, disagreement becomes information. You listen. You assess. You decide whether to adjust or remain firm. There is no urgency to resolve tension immediately. This patience communicates strength. It shows that you are not threatened by opposing views. You do not need to win. You need to remain aligned. Alignment is more important than agreement. When you sacrifice alignment for approval, you lose credibility with yourself, and that loss is felt externally. People sense when someone does not fully stand behind their words. They may still agree, but respect diminishes. Influence cannot survive without self-respect. Detachment preserves it. Approval seeking also affects boundaries. When you need approval, boundaries feel risky. You hesitate to say no. You hesitate to disappoint. You hesitate to hold a line. So boundaries blur, and blurred boundaries invite intrusion. People push when limits are unclear, not out of malice, but out of uncertainty. Clear boundaries provide structure. They tell others what to expect. They reduce confusion, and they create safety. Influence grows in structured environments. Detachment makes boundaries easier. When you are not afraid of disapproval, you can say no calmly. You can decline without apology. You can hold a position without defensiveness. This calm firmness earns respect, not because it pleases everyone, but because it is consistent. Consistency builds trust over time. Approval seeking also fragments identity. You become one version of yourself in one context and another version elsewhere. You adapt constantly. You shift positions to fit expectations. This adaptation feels exhausting, and it creates an underlying sense of instability. People sense this instability. They may not articulate it, but they feel that something is unclear. Influence requires coherence. You must be the same person across situations. Not rigid, but consistent. Detachment allows this consistency. When you no longer need approval, you no longer need to shapeshift. You can respond appropriately without abandoning yourself. This internal coherence is deeply persuasive. People trust those who remain themselves under pressure. Influence without approval also transforms leadership. Leaders who seek approval become reactive. They adjust direction based on mood. They explain decisions excessively. They hesitate to make unpopular choices. This creates instability. People may like them, but they do not rely on them. Reliability matters more than likability. Detachment supports reliability. When you are willing to be disliked temporarily in service of clarity, you provide direction. Direction reduces anxiety, and reducing anxiety is one of the most powerful forms of influence. People follow those who help them feel grounded. Approval seeking does the opposite. It transmits anxiety. It signals that outcomes are uncertain, that decisions are negotiable, that leadership is fragile. Detachment stabilizes the environment. It communicates that decisions are considered, that values are clear, and that direction will hold. This stability invites trust. Influence without approval also deepens listening. When you're not listening for validation, you can listen fully. You hear nuance. You hear intention. You hear what is said and what is avoided. You are not preparing a response while the other person speaks. This quality of listening is rare, and it is powerful. People feel seen when they are truly heard. They feel respected when they are not managed. Respect amplifies influence, not because people are persuaded, but because they feel safe engaging honestly. Detachment also clarifies decision-making. When approval is removed from the equation, choices become simpler, not easier, but clearer. You ask different questions. Does this align with what matters? Is this consistent with direction? Am I willing to accept the consequences? These questions cut through noise. They replace external reaction with internal clarity. And internal clarity always leads to stronger influence. Influence without approval does not mean isolation. It does not mean ignoring feedback. It does not mean refusing to adjust. It means choosing consciously rather than reacting emotionally. You can listen deeply and still decide independently. You can consider perspectives without surrendering direction. This balance is the mark of mature influence. Over time, people learn how you operate. They learn that you are open but not malleable, that you are thoughtful but not uncertain, that you are calm but not passive. This predictability builds trust. People stop testing boundaries. They stop pushing for reassurance. They stop seeking constant clarification. Because direction is clear, approval is no longer required for influence to function. As you continue, notice where approval still shapes your communication. Notice when you soften unnecessarily, when you explain to prevent disagreement, when you hesitate to state a position clearly. Do not judge it, simply recognize it. Detachment is a practice, not a switch. Each time you choose clarity over comfort, you strengthen influence. Each time you allow disagreement without reaction, you build authority. Each time you hold your position calmly, without seeking validation, you reinforce trust in yourself. And that trust is what others respond to. Influence does not require approval. It requires alignment. When you are aligned internally, your words carry weight. When your words carry weight, people listen. Not because they are convinced, but because they feel the steadiness behind what you say. That steadiness is the quiet source of real influence. Chapter 8. Lead yourself. First, leadership does not begin with direction. It begins with discipline. Before anyone follows you, you are already leading someone. Yourself. Every reaction you allow, every impulse you indulge, every emotion you fail to regulate sets the ceiling for your influence. People respond less to what you say than to how you govern yourself. Self-leadership is visible. It shows up in how you handle pressure, in how you respond to uncertainty, in how you manage discomfort without exporting it to others. When you cannot lead yourself, your communication becomes inconsistent. Your tone shifts with mood. Your decisions change with reaction. Your boundaries soften under stress. And people feel it. They may not confront it directly, but they adjust their expectations. Influence weakens. Leading yourself first means establishing internal order. Not control through suppression, but control through awareness. You notice emotion without acting on it. You acknowledge impulse without obeying it. You pause long enough to choose. This pause is where leadership begins. Without it, behavior becomes reactive. Reaction is fast, but it is not effective. It transfers instability outward. When you react, others react with you. Tension multiplies. Clarity disappears. Self-leadership interrupts this cycle. It creates space between stimulus and response. In that space, you regain control. You choose tone instead of defaulting to it. You choose words instead of releasing them. You choose silence instead of escalation. This choice is felt immediately. People sense when a response is chosen rather than triggered. It communicates maturity. Self-leadership also requires consistency. Not perfection, but reliability. You do not need to be flawless. You need to be predictable in your principles. When values change with circumstance, trust erodes. People do not know where you stand. They cannot anticipate your response. Uncertainty creates anxiety. Self-leadership reduces it. When you act consistently, especially under pressure, you create stability. Others relax, and relaxed people are easier to influence. Consistency does not mean rigidity. It means alignment. Your actions reflect your stated priorities. Your behavior matches your words. When this alignment is present, authority feels natural. You no longer need to assert it. It is assumed. Self-leadership also shapes how you manage energy. Influence requires presence. Presence requires energy. When you waste energy on unnecessary conflict, on emotional reactions, on constant explanation, you have less to give where it matters. Self-leadership conserves energy. You stop engaging in battles that do not move direction. You stop responding to provocation. You stop correcting what does not need correction. This selectivity sharpens impact. People notice when your attention is not easily pulled. They recognize that when you engage, it is intentional. This intentionality commands respect. Leading yourself first also means taking responsibility for internal states. You do not blame tone on circumstance. You do not excuse reaction as pressure. You do not justify inconsistency as necessity. You own your state. This ownership is powerful. It removes excuses. It removes defensiveness. It removes the need to explain. You simply adjust. Self-leadership is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It operates beneath the surface, yet it shapes everything above it. People respond to the results, not the effort. When you lead yourself well, your communication stabilizes. Your tone remains even. Your words become measured. Your presence becomes reliable. Reliability is rare, and rarity creates value. Self-leadership also requires humility. Not submission, but accuracy. You recognize where you are reactive. You acknowledge where you are triggered. You admit where discipline is lacking. This honesty is internal first. You do not need to confess it publicly. You need to correct it privately. Correction, repeated over time, builds mastery. Mastery changes how you show up. You become less urgent, less defensive, less concerned with outcome. And this detachment strengthens influence. People feel safer around those who are not ruled by impulse. They trust leaders who do not externalize stress. Self-leadership also determines how you handle failure. When you cannot lead yourself, failure destabilizes identity. You overcorrect, you explain, you search for reassurance. But when you lead yourself, failure becomes information. You assess, you adjust, you move forward. This calm response builds credibility. People trust those who do not collapse under setback. They follow those who maintain direction. Leading yourself first also means setting standards. Not for others, but for yourself. You decide what behavior is acceptable from you, what tone you will maintain, what boundaries you will uphold. These standards are not negotiable. They guide behavior when emotion rises. Without standards, choices are made in the moment, and moment-based choices are unreliable. Standards create continuity. They ensure that your actions remain aligned even when conditions change. This alignment is what others respond to. Self-leadership also affects how you communicate boundaries. When you lead yourself, boundaries are clear and calm. They are not defensive. They are not emotional. They are simply stated. This is not something I will engage in. This is the direction we are taking. This is where I stand. No explanation, no apology, because you have already decided. Decision removes tension. Undecided minds seek validation. Decided minds offer clarity. Clarity invites trust. Leading yourself first also means respecting your own word. When you say you will do something, you do it. When you set a boundary, you hold it. When you commit to a standard, you maintain it. These small acts accumulate. Over time, they create a reputation. People learn that your words are reliable, that your actions follow through. This reliability becomes influence, not through persuasion, but through expectation. People anticipate consistency. They adjust behavior accordingly. This adjustment is influence in its purest form. Self-leadership is not dramatic. It does not create moments. It creates patterns, and patterns shape outcomes. As this audiobook comes to a close, understand this. You do not need more techniques. You need more alignment. You do not need to dominate conversations. You need to govern yourself. Influence grows from the inside out. When you lead yourself with clarity, restraint, and discipline, others respond naturally. Not because you push, not because you persuade, but because your presence is steady. and steady presence is the foundation of all lasting influence. Lead yourself first, everything else follows. Authority does not end with discipline. It is sustained by reflection. Leading yourself first also means regularly examining your inner state, not with judgment, but with honesty. You notice patterns, when impatience appears, when defensiveness arises, when ego quietly takes control. These moments are not failures, they are signals. Signals that something inside requires attention. Self-leadership listens to those signals instead of ignoring them. You ask simple questions. Why did this trigger me? What am I protecting? What outcome am I attached to? These questions restore clarity. Without reflection, discipline becomes rigid. With reflection, it becomes intelligent. Intelligent discipline adapts without losing structure. This adaptability is essential. Influence is not static. Situations change. People change. Pressure shifts. If you cannot adjust internally, you will overcompensate externally. That overcompensation shows up as control, as force, as urgency. Self-leadership prevents this. It allows you to recalibrate quietly before the world feels the shift. Leading yourself also requires patience. Growth in self-mastery is slow. It does not offer immediate reward. It does not provide external recognition. Most of the work happens unseen. You resist an impulse no one notices. You regulate an emotion no one acknowledges. You choose restraint when reaction would be easier. These choices accumulate silently, and over time, they change who you are. People respond to this change even if they cannot explain it. They feel your steadiness. They trust your direction. They rely on your presence. Self-leadership also reshapes ambition. Instead of striving to be impressive, you focus on being consistent. Instead of chasing influence, you become someone whose influence is inevitable. This shift removes anxiety. You are no longer performing. You are simply acting in alignment. Alignment reduces friction when inner values and outer behavior match. There is no internal resistance, and without resistance inside, there is less resistance outside. People follow alignment instinctively. Leading yourself first also means accepting solitude. Not isolation, but independence. You are willing to stand alone in decision. You are willing to be misunderstood temporarily. You are willing to move forward without consensus. This willingness is rare, and rarity commands attention. Self-leadership gives you the strength to tolerate uncertainty without rushing to resolve it. You allow outcomes to unfold. You trust your preparation. You trust your judgment. This trust radiates outward. Others feel it. They relax around it. They align with it. In the end, self-leadership is not about control. It is about coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions move together, your presence becomes unmistakable. You do not need to assert influence. It emerges naturally. You do not need to demand authority. It is granted. Because people follow what feels stable. They trust what feels grounded. They respond to what is internally led. This is the quiet conclusion. Influence without force is possible only when leadership begins within. Lead yourself first, and everything you say afterward will carry more weight than you ever intended. Tak Pian. Influence was never meant to be loud. It was never meant to dominate, persuade, or overpower. Those methods may create movement, but they do not create trust. They may win moments, but they rarely shape direction. True influence works differently. It moves quietly, it settles beneath the surface, and it changes outcomes not by pressure, but by presence. Throughout this audiobook, one principle has remained constant. Clarity precedes authority, and authority precedes influence. When thinking is clear, words become precise. When words are precise, tone settles, and when tone is calm, resistance fades. This is not a communication strategy. It is a way of being. You have seen how silence can be stronger than speech, how restraint can carry more weight than volume, how detachment from approval creates freedom instead of distance. None of these ideas ask you to become someone else. They ask you to remove what no longer serves you. Remove urgency. Remove over-explanation. Remove the need to manage reactions. What remains is steadiness, and steadiness is rare. In a world that rewards speed, choosing deliberation feels unnatural. In a world that encourages constant expression, choosing restraint feels uncomfortable. But comfort has never been the source of authority. Authority grows where discipline lives, where emotion is regulated rather than released, where decisions are made internally before they are spoken aloud. This is why self-leadership sits at the center of influence. You cannot consistently influence others if you are constantly negotiating with yourself. You cannot speak with authority if your inner state shifts with every reaction. You cannot build trust if your presence changes under pressure. Leading yourself first resolves these fractures. It brings coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions align, your communication stabilizes. You no longer need to convince. You no longer need to rush. You no longer need to fill silence to feel secure. You simply speak when it matters and stop when it doesn't. This restraint changes how people respond to you. They listen more closely. They interrupt less. They consider rather than resist. Not because you demand attention, but because your presence earns it. Influence without force does not seek agreement. It creates clarity, and clarity allows others to decide freely. This freedom is essential. People resist pressure instinctively, but they follow clarity willingly. They align with those who are grounded. They trust those who are consistent. They respond to those who do not need them to respond. This is the paradox of influence. The less you push, the more room others have to move toward you. The less you explain, the more your words are valued. The less you seek approval, the more respect you receive. None of this happens overnight. These qualities are built through repetition. Through quiet choices, no one applauds. Through moments of restraint, no one notices. You pause when reaction feels easier. You remain silent when explanation tempts you. You hold your position calmly when disagreement arises. Each of these moments strengthens internal authority, and internal authority compounds. Over time, it reshapes how you show up in every interaction. Your voice slows, your tone settles, your words become fewer, but heavier. People sense the shift. They may not comment on it. They may not even understand it, but they adjust. They meet your pace. They respect your boundaries. They listen when you speak. This is influence functioning at its highest level. Not dramatic, not forceful, not performative, but stable. As you move forward, do not treat these ideas as techniques to apply. Treat them as standards to return to. When communication feels strained, return to clarity. When authority feels challenged, return to self-leadership. When influence feels forced, return to restraint. Ask yourself simple questions. Am I clear internally before I speak? Am I regulating my state or exporting it? Am I seeking alignment or approval? These questions recalibrate your presence. They bring you back to center. And from that center, everything you say carries more weight. Remember this. You do not need to dominate conversations to lead them. You do not need to persuade aggressively to influence outcomes. You do not need to be loud to be powerful. You need to be clear. You need to be calm. You need to be grounded. When you are, others feel it. And when others feel it, influence follows. Without force, without pressure, without resistance. That is the quiet advantage. Carry it with you. Let your clarity speak before your words do. Trust that when you lead yourself well, everything else will respond naturally.